Smoking and the coronavirus. Are you smoking and worried because of the coronavirus? Are you trying to quit smoking and the coronavirus is making you worry more about your smoking? Are you wanting to quit smoking and you're just curious what the latest science says about quitting smoking and the coronavirus? If that is you, then this video is for you. And make sure you stay to the end, because at the end, I'm going to give you 7 things that you can do to actually quit smoking, especially if you're fearful of the coronavirus. We are going to show you at the end of this video how to go from a place of fear to a place of action and actually quitting. If this is your first time to this channel, make sure you hit the notification button. It will simply tell you when I post a new video. And to do that, you have to subscribe. So subscribe and then hit the notification button. Also, the other thing I'm going to do for you is I'm going to put in the description of this video a link to my calendar so you can book yourself into a free 15-minute phone consultation with me. I'll simply get you on the right track to quit smoking for the rest of your life. It's free. You and I will have a good time, we will laugh, and we'll get you going in the right direction. I designed that 15-minute call to be fun on purpose. Also, if you have any questions, or even if you have comments, or you know of other research or something else you think would be of value, put it in the comment section. And please, we love questions. Comment on this video below. We answer all comments, and we allow anyone else's opinion, even if it differs from mine. As long as you don't post links, we will allow the comment to stand. So now let's hop right into the content here, okay? So we're going to do 3 things today. We're going to talk about what's the current state of the research. We're going to try to make it as quickly and as painless as we can. We're going to then look at, well, what does that mean if we're a smoker? And then third, what can we actually do about it? We're going to do that at the end of the video, because if we're worried about smoking the coronavirus and we give ourselves the knowledge of what the current science says, why wouldn't we act on it and do something? So we're going to actually look at what we can actually act on. Okay, so we're going to hop right into the content here. Here is where I am pulling all of this information from so that you know the source. You'll see this on the screen now. This is coming from the Journal of Medical Virology. It's called The Effect of Smoking on COVID-19 Severity, a systematic review and meta-analysis. Here's what this is, because not everyone has a background in science like me, so you just need to understand, what are we actually looking at? Here's what we're looking at. You're not looking at an actual piece of research. You're looking at an analysis of all of the research. So here's how research works. Research is sometimes funded privately, meaning a company or a corporation pays for a piece of research. When it comes to smoking and COVID, tobacco companies have paid for about 30% of all research. Want to take a wild guess as to the bias of that particular research? Yes, of course, to try and disprove any link between severe COVID or COVID mortality and smoking. So what this study actually does is it looks at the sources and sees if it has a bias, and it removes those from their analysis. So it's really only looking at the actual hardcore real scientific research that doesn't come from bias. So that's what this paper is. So here's what's in this paper. It looks at 1,038 scientific papers, and it cuts it down to about the 700 to date. So the very first research paper was done way back in March in China when the COVID first came out. All the way up to now, there have been almost 1,000, and about 700 of them are real hardcore research. So we actually know a lot about COVID and smoking, because all of those papers were specifically about COVID and smoking. So let me give you the 3 highlights, the 3 things that this research found, and then I'll read you from the conclusion. Here's what we know from all the scientific literature. That if you are a smoker and or a vapor, you have an increased risk of severe COVID-19. Patients with a history of smoking or vaping have an increased risk of in-hospital mortality. You also have an increased risk for mechanical ventilation. So what does that mean? If you're a vapor or you're a smoker, you have an increased risk for critical COVID-19, an increased risk of death, and you're more likely to need a ventilator. That's what all of these scientific papers said. So now let's just look at the conclusion. So you're going to see the conclusion up there on your screen now. I'm just going to read you parts of it, but take a screenshot if you want to read the whole thing, or go back and read the actual research. Here is what it says. In conclusion, in the largest meta-analysis available amongst peer-reviewed literature, we report that both current smoking and a smoking history significantly increase COVID-19 severity. So that's what we found out. That's the current state of science. If you smoke or you vape, you have an increased risk of getting COVID and an increased risk of severity. You also have a significant increase in mortality risk, meaning you are more likely to die. In fact, we even know that it's 16.9% increase in mortality. Here's the last thing I'm going to read from this conclusion. The analysis suggests that smoking represents one of the most immediately modifiable risk factors to reduce the substantial morbidity associated with the disease. What does that mean? This is all it means. It means as if you quit. That's a good thing. It will actually decrease your risk. The longer you are quit, the better chance you will have of not dying from COVID or having severe COVID. So that's the state of the science. That's what we know today. If you find other research out there that says something else, likely it's funded by some special interest group like Big Tobacco. So let's now just look at the facts of smoking and COVID before we get into what you can actually do. Here are the facts, and tell me if you see any similarities. Let's start with smoking and vaping, because they both have all of these 4 things. 1, both smoking and vaping reduce your lung capacity. We know that from science. We know that both smoking and vaping cause respiratory infections. We know that both smoking and vaping suppresses your immune system from science. We also know that smoking and vaping are inflammatory, particularly inflammatory on your lungs, but they're actually inflammatory on your entire nervous system and throughout your entire body. So that's smoking and vaping. Reduce lung capacity, respiratory infections, suppresses your immune system, and they're both inflammatory. Let's look at COVID. COVID is a respiratory disease that causes what? Inflammation. It attacks your lungs and decreases lung capacity. COVID is a respiratory infection. That's what COVID is. So let's just go over smoking and COVID. Reduces lung capacity, causes respiratory infections, attacks your immune system, causes inflammation. They're exactly the same thing, and this is why if you smoke or you vape, you have an increased likelihood of getting COVID, getting a severity of COVID that's very high. You're more likely to die, and you are more likely to need ventilation. In fact, we know that your chance of death increases by 16.9% as either a vapor or a smoker. So that's the current state of the research. It's unlikely to change now that we're at over 1,000 studies. Here's what we need to know. So let's have a look at this. What can we do? How do we go from fear now to a place of action? Because that's really what we want. We don't want to live in fear. We want to change. So there's 3 things that are required for change. So I'm going to tell you the 3 things you require for change, and then I'm going to give you 7 tips, tricks, and hacks that you can do to actually take action and quit. So let's start with what do you need to change. You need 3 things. Something has to change. It's the first thing you need to have. You have to believe that something has to change. I like to describe it as you're sick and tired of being sick and tired of smoking, or you're sick and tired of being sick and tired of vaping, or trying to quit and failing. That's a good place to be for change. Something has to change. That something has to be me. Okay, if you're blaming the addiction, if you're making yourself into a victim because you're just addicted, that you're putting your power outside of yourself. But if you sort of shift it internally and realize it's really what's driving you, keeping you stuck, is that it's more habit, right? That's something that has to change, is me that has to change. I'm not a victim. I'm actually in a place of power, and I can change my habits and my behaviors. So you need to have that. So something has to change. That something that must change must be me. And the last one is when? Now. Not I'm going to quit next month, or I'm going to quit when I have less stress in my life, or whatever excuse you want to put in there. Anything that is not now is an excuse, period, end of story. Okay? To change, You have to believe that something has to change, that something has to be me, and it has to happen now. You need those three things. Until you have those three things, you're never changing. You just aren't. And you're never quitting. You need to have those three elements. That's what's required. We know from neuroscience to be able to change. You've got to have those three things. Now let's look at 7 tips and tricks you can do to actually go from that place to actually attempting to quit. So the first thing is do your research. So watching this video is a great place to start. Watch other videos on my channel. For example, watch the video on the stacking method because it is the most successful method to quit smoking that's known. And if you don't know what that is, there's a video on this channel just about the stacking method. So go watch that. But what I want you to do, so you're going to do the research. 2, after you've done the research, you're going to pick a method. You know, it doesn't almost even necessarily matter what method. If you do the research, you'll look at what the success rates of the different methods are, and you'll pick either the one that's best for you, that you believe is best for you, because that's really important. It's what you believe is the best for you, and the one that's going to give you the highest likelihood of quitting. So pick a method. I always like to say, make sure that method in some way or shape or form involves stacking. So go figure out, watch my video on stacking. Learn how to deal with cravings, because withdrawal and cravings are real. They're not imaginary. And it's really helpful if you know and understand how to deal with them. Okay? Prepare your mind for quitting smoking. So the first 4 that I gave you, do the research, pick a method, make sure the method uses stacking, learn how to deal with cravings. That's all part of preparing your mind for quitting smoking. If you think that how you prepare your mind for quitting smoking is to wake up one day and go, I'm going to quit cold turkey and I'm quitting today, that is not preparing. That is not preparing at all. In fact, if that's what you're doing, you have the greatest likelihood of failure. If you want to fail, that's what you'll do. Failure to plan is planning for failure. You have to plan. Okay, so that's number 5. Prepare your mind for quitting smoking, which basically means plan. Pick a quit date. Okay, so number 6. And number 7 is just jump. Pick a method and do it, and jump in both feet. Here's what you need to know. 7% of people can quit cold turkey. What do we know about those people? We know they have an IQ of 150 or higher, and they tend to be overachievers. Okay, I do not have an IQ of 150. I was not able to quit that way. I had to quit using stacking. Okay, so that means 93% of us quit with the aid of a program, which means you have to plan and prepare. So let's go over these 7 tips again. Do the research, learn, look at all the different methods, look at their success rates, pick a method. My suggestion is pick a method that uses stacking. Learn how to deal with cravings. This is part of planning and preparing. Prepare your mind for quitting smoking. Download my PDF ebook on how to prepare your mind for quitting smoking. It has a whole plan in there and steps about how to do it. Pick a quit date and then just jump. Because the only way change ever happens in life is somebody taking a bold step forward and trying or doing something that they themselves didn't even expect they would do. Because when we act boldly, unforeseen incidences come and happen to us that help us to get to where it is we're trying to go. So hopefully this video was helpful to you. Remember, I've put in the description below my calendar so you can book yourself into a free 15-minute phone consultation. I'll get you on the right track to quit smoking for the rest of your life. Please comment. And if this is your first time to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. It will tell you when I post new content. I post new content twice a week. You can join my Facebook page or you can follow me on Instagram. I post lots of stories on my Instagram from people who have done my program and successfully quit. I call it in their own words. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Blessings to everyone, and I'll talk to you soon.